Following the unexpected passing of its founder and CEO, Floyd Coates, American Plastic Molding Corporation decided to transition from private ownership to an employee stock ownership plan, commonly known as an ESOP. President Ann Coates established the ESOP in 2013 with a desire to maintain the company's legacy and longevity, and completed the transition to a 100% employee-owned company. Here's their success story.
My husband was the founder of the company, and he ran it for many years successfully. And when he passed away, I was trustee of his holdings there. And I decided as trustee that the best way for this company to have a long-term healthy future was to transition into the ESOP mode.
And tell us a little bit about how has that worked out? In other words, since the time that the ESOP was formed, and I'd love to also know about the day that you shared the information with your team. What was that day like?
We had a big company-wide meeting on the factory floor. We cleared enough peripheral equipment out of the way and got to that there were chairs for everyone, and put up a huge screen to project onto, and we had slides of pictures of all the employees, and they were just scrolling through one person after another. So every so often, everybody was seeing their own faces, up on the screen.
Mm-hmm.
That just went on by, and I think I opened by saying something about y'all probably wonder about this meeting, and we have to prepare for the future, or something like this. And I said, there's going to be new owners of the company, and so then that gets attention. And I said, you've been seeing the pictures all the time you've been sitting here. Look up at this screen. The new owners of the company are right there.
And what was the reaction from all of your team members at that point?
Interestingly, after the meeting, the man who had been general manager for a long time came up to me and said, Ann, this is the best possible thing you could do. I only wish I could have been here longer, because he immediately processed that staying with the company, getting more shares, all of that was to be, and he was way closer to retirement than he wished he was at the time.
And how, if you were to say, I know you talk about being the best place to work, how has it turned out from the employee's perspective, the now owner's perspective? How do they feel about the company? What will be your assessment after seeing it unfold and seeing how it's how the whole thing has become a reality? What does that look like from your perspective?
The first year statement is like, yeah, so their value's not much, but then it started creeping up. Mm-hmm. And then a couple of people separated from the company for one reason. One lady I remember, one of the early ones, was she just had health reasons and couldn't work anymore, and she got a check. And I confess, I cried, because it was part of the plan. A recent story that HR gals called to tell me, they didn't mention the name because they shouldn't, but they described the guy, and there was no question in my mind who it was. Crusty guy. So you just don't talk to him. Anyway, he's a character. And they had him in the office just doing paperwork, because he was retiring. And Mr. Crusty cried when he heard the amount. And they went on and said some other things he said, and I was just like, oh, wow, that's so amazing. And they said, yeah, we knew you'd like this.
It's so nice when things work out the way you expect and hope that they will from the beginning. And obviously it comes with a team behind you. And so I'd like to turn to Scott, if you don't mind. Scott, from your perspective, you shepherded the transaction and helped all of this to happen. What was it like for you and your team?
Well, I would probably change the words on that and say Ann truly led and shepherded the whole things, but I felt like we were alongside with Ann and walked shoulder to shoulder through the whole process, because it was really about understanding what Ann and Floyd would have liked to see happen. And so it's just a lot of listening and a lot of helping Ann and communicating to the other professionals in the process, and just ensuring that we stayed on task.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things originally asked you about the rollout meeting, and there were two things I remembered. One was when you talked about that you had identified the new buyer of the business. Mm-hmm. I remember being in there because I was part of answering the questions along with the attorney and Victor Aspengren and some other folks. And we all had a sport coat on and, ties and all of that. And when you said we've identified the new owners of the business, all the eyes went over to us.
Yes.
And you said it was perfect because you said, guys, you're looking the wrong way. You need to look over my shoulder. Some pictures you've been looking at all day long. It was magical.
So ESOPs really are a way of having that buy-in come, that culture shift in the mind of an employee to becoming the mind of an owner. Talk a little bit about that in your experience, what a great benefit that can be to having a long-term sustainable operation.
You can see, if done correctly, a real shift in the way that the team focuses and looks at what they do each and every day. But notice I said, if you do it right, education is so very important. Governance is so very important. In fact, and one of the things she did a couple to 3 years into this, maybe a little longer, was to create a formal board of directors so that there was a strong governance that went long into the future, even after Ann may not be there. Well, take that concept and think of the ESOP being a 401k plan that only invests in the stock of the company that the person works for. But also think of it as a plan in which the employee does not need to make any contribution to. That is the normal process. And so it's a non-contributory plan that the company is making a contribution of shares effectively to that team member on an annual basis. And as the company grows, as the value grows, that person benefits commensurately.
Which means that obviously the longer someone stays around, the more of a contribution is going to go to them as the company continues.
Exactly.
Yeah, perfectly said. Yeah.
And last question for you, Scott. How does HSC CPA help a potential ESOP company, if you will, a company that fits all the right parameters? How does HSC CPA help that enterprise determine the feasibility, the likelihood that it's going to work out, and all the way through the transaction? Talk a little bit about that, please.
Yeah, you always love an answer that starts with depends, but it really depends, right? But if you're starting with a situation where a company is just looking into the possibility of an ESOP, you said the word perfectly. It's the feasibility, and really I prefer the word fitability of an ESOP, because I think most of the time you can make an argument that it's feasible, but the bigger question in my mind is it fittable? And once you go beyond that step, then it's a matter of identifying the right trustee, the right attorneys, the right professionals to be involved in the transaction. And in the role we typically play, we tend to help quarterback that process.
And what would you say to someone who's contemplating the idea of doing an ESOP for their enterprise based on your experience?
To get a good team of advisors, and the team at Harding wholeheartedly recommend them, no question about that. But there's other people too. And I found it very efficient to have a team to include attorney, trustee, other advisor things, the benefits managers, people who already knew each other.
Yep.
It made everything flow more smoothly because they're accustomed to working with each other. And that happened by Scott's suggestions. He didn't drive it, but just said, what are these? And I just went with them.
Yeah, a great team always make things work out well in the end. So, Ann, thank you very much. Scott, thank you very much for your insights, your sharing, and of course, for making this ESOP transaction as successful as it has been to ensure the longevity of the company. Thank you both.